A sealed envelope, untouched for decades, is handed to Prince William under tight security. Inside lies a clause no one expected, a clause his mother, Diana, ensured would remain hidden until the right moment. That moment is now. And the contents are about to shift the balance of royal power forever. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It began with a whisper, an unexpected summons to a discreet chamber inside Kensington Palace. William, already burdened by the weight of his title and his mother's ghost, was handed the envelope with no explanation, only the words, "She wanted you to have this when the time was right." It was labelled in her handwriting, unmistakable, with a chilling simplicity, "Private, for William only." For a brief second he hesitated, as if some part of him knew opening it would change everything. And it did. Inside lay a legal document bearing the royal seal and a smaller folded letter Diana had personally written. What William read in those pages made the blood drain from his face. It was more than a mother's love, it was a revelation, a buried truth that would upend everything he thought he understood about his family, his future, and his father. The letter referred to a clause one omitted from public records of Diana's will that had remained locked away by her specific instruction. The language was deliberate, not emotional but urgent, as if she had foreseen something dark and inevitable. The clause dealt not just with inheritance or titles, but with guardianship and moral authority over William and Harry should anything happen to her. She questioned decisions already made within the palace and laid out her alternative vision for her sons, one that challenged everything Prince Charles had established. When royal legal advisors reviewed the clause, their faces reportedly turned pale. Some left the room without a word. Others began quietly contacting higher legal authorities. And yet, for all the chaos it unleashed, not one of them dared leak the full contents, not yet. Within hours, rumors started to spread through the palace corridors. Aides whispered of a forgotten clause and secret instructions. Senior courtiers began locking their doors. Somewhere in Sandringham, Charles received a private phone call from William. What followed, according to insiders, was a silence so deafening it confirmed the worst. Charles was reportedly visibly distressed. Locking himself away for the remainder of the evening, the staff, unsure how to respond, cancelled all remaining appointments for the day. The nature of Diana's clause, so precise, so disruptive, pointed to a calculated move by a mother who had long suspected her intentions might be erased. But she had found a way to ensure they weren't. And while no official statement was released, it was already too late. The monarchy felt the tremor. Royal advisors began scrambling to evaluate the fallout. Legal experts debated its implications behind closed doors. Some questioned whether this was merely symbolic, a ghost reaching out from the past. But others knew better. Diana had always played a longer game than anyone gave her credit for. The clause wasn't just a note, it was a legal grenade, and it had just gone off in William's hands. But the contents of the clause aren't just shocking, they're explosive, and they force William to confront a chilling possibility about his own father. For decades, Diana's will was thought to be simple, elegant, even predictable. But hidden deep within, sealed by her own hand, was a final amendment written in anguish and foresight. What drove her to encode such a specific demand? And who knew it existed? It was the summer of 1996 when Diana, already divorced and stripped of her royal status, sat in a quiet room with her personal legal counsel. The air was thick with urgency. She was not there to revise the known details of her estate, but to make a hidden addition, one that would remain sealed under strict instruction. The lawyer, long since retired, recalls how Diana's tone had shifted that day. She wasn't weeping or broken, she was composed, yet resolute. The document she brought with her wasn't a revision, but a warning. She called it her safeguard, a protective measure meant to remain unseen until the very moment it was needed. That moment, as she saw it, would come when William turned 40, not a day before. She feared the machinery of the monarchy would try to erase her voice, her memory, and most of all, her authority as their mother. The passage she wrote that still echoes in legal circles reads like a cryptic confession. If he, Charles, dares to dictate their destiny unopposed, this is my voice preserved. One line, scribbled in the margins, struck William like thunder, a betrayal too great to remain unguarded. What betrayal? What did she know? In hindsight, every whisper Diana once shared now carries a heavier weight. She had spoken often of her paranoia of phones tapped, rooms swept for bugs and shadows that followed her car even in daylight. Many dismissed her concerns as exaggerations born from trauma. But now, with this clause out in the open, those fears feel prophetic. The clause directly challenges Charles's influence over the boys, not just in matters of upbringing, but in how they would be shaped as future leaders. Diana had always worried that the same machinery that isolated her would mold her sons into something unrecognizable. She wrote of keeping their humanity intact, of resisting the cold detachment that royal duty demanded. And more alarmingly, she expressed deep concern over external figures, individuals within palace walls who she feared were orchestrating a long-term strategy to sideline her entirely. Her words weren't vague, they were calculated, as if written for a trial yet to come. One former royal butler who served Diana until her final days recalled her whispering late one night, "They will try to bury my memory. So I've left something behind they cannot silence." That something, it turns out, was this clause. A legally binding time bomb, carefully crafted not just to protect William, but to haunt those who underestimated her. For years, the monarchy operated as though her voice had been quieted forever. They moved forward with plans, with traditions, with politics as usual. But Diana's measure was never about the present, it was about the reckoning she knew would come. And now that the protective measure has been unleashed, its implications are poised to not only undermine Charles, but reshape William's understanding of everything he's inherited. When William confronts Charles with the clause, the atmosphere reportedly turns ice cold. Charles stares blankly before retreating into silence, but it's what he says next, 5 words, that will send William into a spiral of doubt and disbelief. Sandringham had always been the stage for royal diplomacy, not raw confrontation. But this meeting shattered the illusion of calm. William arrived with the clause in hand, his mother's words still echoing in his ears, demanding clarity, demanding truth. What began as a request for explanation quickly escalated into something far more volatile. Charles, seated across from him in that dim, tradition-heavy room, didn't raise his voice. He didn't offer warmth. He merely looked at his son, then glanced down at the clause like it was a ghost that had returned to haunt him. "This was never meant to be read," he muttered. William pressed harder, asking why the clause was hidden, why Diana's final wishes were never honored. That's when Charles spoke the words that would haunt his son forever. She never forgave the truth. Those 5 words cracked the foundation beneath William's feet. What truth? What wound had Diana carried so deeply that it required encoding her vengeance into legal stone? Charles refused to elaborate. Instead, he reached for the decency of protocol, calling the clause incomplete, irrelevant, and unenforceable. But William wasn't there to discuss technicalities. He was there for answers. And behind every carefully chosen word, he saw the tremor of guilt. As Charles tried to pivot, to shift focus to the monarchy's stability, Camilla entered the room unannounced. Her face, already tight with tension, betrayed what she knew. She tried to speak, but William raised his hand firm, unwavering, and said quietly, "This is between my father and me." The room fell into silence once again, and with a cold glance from Charles, Camilla turned and left. What followed was a devastating exchange. William didn't yell, he didn't need to. He spoke of betrayal, of silence, of his mother's fears that had now manifested in ink and legal weight. Charles, defensive and visibly aging under the weight of his past, reminded William of duty, of tradition, of the role he was being groomed to uphold. But William saw that for what it was, a distraction. The real issue was never the crown. It was the fracture between a father and a son, exposed now by a mother who had refused to be forgotten. The confrontation ended not with closure, but with William walking out, cancelling a scheduled appearance and refusing to return messages from the palace. He didn't need more time, he needed truth. And in that moment he realized Charles may never be capable of giving it. What began as a hidden clause had become a detonator, one that had just ignited the deepest fault line in the House of Windsor. For William, this was no longer just about a will. It was about a legacy, his mother's legacy, and whether he had the strength to honor it when everyone else seemed desperate to forget. The palace was left scrambling. Aides watched silently as the heir to the throne walked away. No longer just Diana's son, but a man demanding justice. And behind closed doors, Charles sat alone, his shoulders hunched, realizing that the past he had tried so hard to bury had inly clawed its way to the surface. But while William wrestles with the emotional storm, the legal consequences of the clause start to ripple across the monarchy like a silent tsunami. Behind the polished doors of royal legal chambers, attorneys scramble to assess the clause's enforceability. If upheld, it could void prior royal decrees and redefine William's inheritance and even the line of succession. One clause, one mother, one kingdom at risk. In the hours following William's explosive confrontation with his father, the document Diana left behind was quietly passed into the hands of the monarchy's most senior legal minds. For decades, they had operated under the assumption that Diana's affairs were resolved, her voice silenced, and her influence confined to the past. But this clause was different. It didn't ask for attention, it demanded it. It named not only specific changes in guardianship, but appointed a non-royal advisor to counsel William on matters relating to his future standing and private inheritance. The name was unfamiliar to many, but the language was unmistakably deliberate. Diana had chosen someone beyond the monarchy's control, someone who, by design, would never bow to royal pressure. Even more damning was the clause's direct challenge to Charles's guardianship after the divorce. It stated, in cold legal terms, that should Diana die unexpectedly, all key decisions regarding William's future were to be handled in consultation with her designated advisor. No. His father. This contradicted official statements released by Buckingham Palace in 1997, which had insisted that all responsibilities had seamlessly transitioned to Charles. It became clear that someone, either by oversight or intent, had concealed this clause from reaching the Queen. No record existed of her ever reviewing it, and according to those close to her circle at the time, she had only been briefed on the original, sanitized version of Diana's will. The legal implications grew more severe with each passing hour. One set of accompanying documents hinted at a trust fund set up by Diana, that William had never accessed money that may have been rerouted, hidden, or quietly absorbed by institutional hands over the years. The clause suggested that those funds were earmarked for something larger, something Diana didn't trust the Crown to control. Within the royal legal team, once confident in their command over legacy and precedent, panic began to take hold. Meetings stretched into the early morning hours. Arguments broke out over constitutional interpretations. At least one barrister, reportedly shaken by the clause's implications, demanded that Parliament be notified. Others argued fiercely for secrecy, warning that even acknowledging the clause's legitimacy could trigger a constitutional scandal. Still, the legality wasn't the only concern. It was the symbolism, the fact that Diana had foreseen betrayal and planted a fuse to expose it. She had prepared for the possibility that those closest to her sons might manipulate their futures, and now that fuse had been lit. The monarchy, long adept at spinning crisis into ceremony, found itself cornered by a document no one could spin, and a son who refused to look away. Each word Diana wrote was now a challenge to everything Charles stood for, everything the institution had built to protect itself. As the debate reached fever pitch, one royal insider issued a quiet warning to the press: what's coming next isn't just legal, it's personal, very personal. Because while lawyers argued over clauses and codes, another storm brewed behind palace walls, one involving Camilla, and a confrontation that will turn whispered suspicions into shouted accusations. According to a palace insider, Camilla's voice could be heard through the walls. This was never meant to be found. As William demands answers, Camilla lashes out, revealing the depth of her own fears and possibly her role in suppressing Diana's voice. The confrontation was not scheduled. It was raw, unexpected, and unfiltered. Camilla, long shielded by a carefully maintained image of discretion and restraint, snapped. Reports claim she burst into the private drawing room where William had just finished yet another meeting with royal legal counsel. Her fury barely contained. Her voice was sharp, her words cutting. "You're digging up ghosts for revenge, not justice." William, unmoved, stood his ground. He wasn't looking for revenge. He was chasing something far more powerful truth. But in that moment, Camilla's composure shattered, and what she revealed next shook the very walls of the palace. She admitted she had known. Not the details, perhaps, but she had been aware that Diana left behind something meant to surface later. Something dangerous, something personal. She spoke of overheard conversations, intercepted letters, and whispers in the corridors that Diana had made legal preparations the firm would not approve of. She never thought it would resurface. She hoped, in her words, it would stay buried with the rest of that tragic chapter. But the truth didn't die with Diana, and Camilla's reaction made one thing unmistakably clear: she had feared this moment for years. According to a senior aide, Camilla had even attempted to interfere in the estate's posthumous management in late 1997. Whether by influence or pressure, the clause was kept out of public view, and Diana's more controversial intentions were quietly redacted from public knowledge. But now, with it exposed, the fallout had begun, and it was starting to consume the very marriage she had fought to legitimize. In the days following the confrontation, insiders noticed a distinct shift between Charles and Camilla. They weren't seen together. There were no joint engagements, no shared statements. Charles, already rattled by William's revelations, reportedly distanced himself from Camilla, refusing to publicly back her as questions mounted. While she remained in the PA, Lace, her presence had changed. She was no longer the poised queen consort figure. They say she moved like a woman under siege. And William? He left that confrontation not with anger but with resolve. He had touched a nerve that confirmed everything Diana had feared. The silencing, the secrecy, the systemic effort to erase her final safeguards. It all pointed back to the very people now trembling in the shadow of her legacy. William emerged from that clash more certain than ever that this wasn't just about an inheritance or a clause. It was about a pattern, a deliberate orchestration of silence. And now that silence was cracking. But just as he began to rally his allies and prepare for what might come next, another twist arrived uninvited. An unmarked envelope slid beneath palace gates in the dead of night. No return address, no signature, only one word typed across the top: Eclipse. But Camilla's fury is only the beginning. As the clause goes public, William receives an anonymous letter that threatens to bring the entire monarchy to its knees. An unmarked envelope is slid beneath Kensington Palace's gate. Inside, a typed letter referencing Operation Eclipse, an alleged covert campaign to erase Diana's post-divorce legal efforts. If real, it means someone tried to bury more than just a clause. They tried to bury her legacy. The letter was unsigned, typed in old-fashioned courier font, and devoid of emotion, but its contents were incendiary. It opened with a chilling declaratio. N. The clause is only the surface. Look deeper. Search for Eclipse. What followed was a maze of cryptic references, names, dates, and locations. It cited several meetings held in the weeks following Diana's death, gatherings between high-ranking courtiers and legal representatives, all reportedly off the record, unlogged, and undocumented.
The purpose?
To reorganize Diana's remaining affairs in a way that preserved the monarchy's image and protected certain individuals from scandal. The letter alleged that her will was not only edited, but diluted, stripped of sections she had revised post-divorce. Among the most damning claims, threats were issued to at least 2 of Diana's estate executors, warning them not to pursue the full contents of her legal documents. One name, buried in the middle of the page, immediately caught William's attention: a former MI5 liaison, known only in public records by a code name. He was rumored to have been Diana's security contact after her official protection was revoked. But now, according to the letter, this figure was part of a covert effort known as Operation Eclipse, a shadow plan designed to suppress any posthumous legal damage Diana could inflict on the crown. If the operation was real, it meant her enemies had moved swiftly, quietly, and without consequence. It also meant the clause William discovered may only be one part of a larger puzzle, one that was never supposed to resurface. Staggered but focused, William immediately escalated T. He let her to Scotland Yard. Though no official investigation was announced, sources confirm a quiet internal review was launched, and the original document was taken into protective custody. Those close to William described him as increasingly withdrawn, but fiercely determined. The revelations weren't just about historical wrongs anymore, they were active threats to his mother's memory. His trust in the monarchy's inner circle was deteriorating by the hour. And then, in an unexpected twist, a former royal bodyguard who served Diana in her final months stepped forward. In a private conversation with a journalist, he confirmed hearing the term eclipse in hushed tones within palace security circles in 1997. It was never explained, never clarified. Only warned, it's about cleaning up loose ends. That phrase, loose ends, cut through William like ice, because it meant that his mother had sensed what was coming. She had anticipated not just betrayal, but erasure, and somehow, despite all efforts to suppress it, her final safeguard, the claws, had slipped through the cracks of that operation and landed exactly where she wanted it, in her son's hands. And now, as the fog of secrecy begins to lift, William realizes this goes far deeper than he feared. He's not only fighting for Diana's voice, he's unraveling a network of silence designed to ensure it was never heard again. As William digs deeper into Diana's forgotten allies, he discovers one person who might hold the missing piece, a woman his mother once trusted more than any royal aide. In a private London residence, an elderly woman opens a wooden box and reveals an old cassette tape. "She made me promise to hide this until you were ready," she says to William. The voice that plays next is unmistakably Diana's, and her words will haunt the royal family forever. The woman was not listed in any public records tied to Diana's estate. She had never granted interviews, never surfaced in tabloids, and yet her connection to the late princess ran deeper than most within the palace walls. She was not a courtier, not a legal mind, but something far more dangerous to the firm and emotional witness, a spiritual confidant. Diana had leaned on her in her darkest hours, trusting her with the truths too volatile to speak in the corridors. Of power. When William arrived unannounced, clutching the anonymous letter marked Eclipse, the woman didn't ask why he was there. She simply nodded and disappeared into a back room. Minutes later, she returned with a small, weathered box and trembling hands. The cassette tape inside was unmarked, save for a tiny label written in Diana's unmistakable cursive, for William. As the woman inserted the tape into a dusty recorder, she whispered, "She made me promise to hide this until you were ready. She said you'd know when the time came." Then came the voice, soft, measured, and unmistakably hers. Diana. Not the public figure, not the princess, just the mother, the woman, the survivor. She spoke plainly, yet every word carried weight. She confessed to sensing that her life was under siege, not just by the press or the paparazzi, but by those inside the very institution she had once vowed to uphold. She spoke of Charles, of his cold distance, and his refusal to protect her from palace manipulation. She named Camilla without venom, but with piercing precision, referring to her as the shadow that was allowed to grow unchecked. But it was her concern for the boy's safety that pierced through. Diana feared not for their physical well-being, but for their souls, their values, their futures. She expressed her distrust in the royal handlers who surrounded them, warning that these men and women served a machine, not the family. She then spoke of a sealed vault, one she'd arranged in secret, containing alternate records, financial notes, and private reflections. She knew the palace would never allow it to be acknowledged. She never expected Charles to understand it, but she believed, with unwavering conviction, that one day William would come looking. As her voice played on, William reportedly turned pale, then red-eyed, then still. He was not hearing a conspiracy theory, he was hearing his mother plead for him to remain human in a world that punished vulnerability. The tape's date aligned perfectly with the last revision of Diana's will. This was no coincidence. It was confirmation. She had tied her legal decisions to her emotional warnings. She had built a fail-safe for a future crisis, and now that future had arrived. With the past roaring back through his mother's voice, William takes one final, defiant step, one that puts him in direct opposition to the crown itself. In a closed-door meeting with royal elders, William slams Diana's will on the table and delivers an ultimatum, recognize her claws, or face the fallout. It's a moment that redefines William not as an heir in waiting, but as a man finally claiming the legacy his mother left him. The tension inside that room was described by one insider as palpable and irreversible. William, calm but unshakably firm, faced the monarchy's most senior decision-makers and made his position clear. There would be no more whispered meetings behind closed doors, no more attempts to soften, edit, or obscure his mother's final wishes. The clause Diana left behind was not a footnote, it was a command, and William demanded that it be publicly acknowledged in full, with legal clarity and moral respect. For the first time in living memory, a senior royal didn't just challenge the institution, he stared it down with the weight of public truth in his hands. He didn't come with advisors, he didn't ask for negotiation. He came with a single choice. Either the monarchy accepted Diana's sealed clause as a binding part of her legacy, or he would withdraw his public support from all ceremonial duties until further notice. No appearances, no tours, no carefully staged portraits to maintain the illusion of unity. And with that, he left the room, leaving behind a stunned silence and a will that had just shaken the monarchy to its core. Within hours, the ripple effects were felt far beyond the palace gates. News of the confrontation leaked to the press. Hashtags supporting William trended worldwide. Millions rallied behind him, calling it the moment Diana's voice had finally been restored. Charles, already reeling from the earlier fallout, was forced to postpone several scheduled appearances. His absence was noted and not explained. Camilla, facing mounting criticism and uncomfortable scrutiny, quietly cancelled 2 major events. Royal commentators struggled to interpret the unprecedented standoff. Behind the scenes, the firm's legal teams began combing through estate records, scrambling to piece together every thing that might be tied to Diana's final instructions. The palace had not faced this kind of internal defiance since the abdication crisis. But this wasn't a prince walking away from duty. This was a son walking into destiny, guided not by protocol but by principle. The decision William made was not just personal, it was revolutionary. For decades, the monarchy had been defined by its ability to manage scandal, control narrative, and bury uncomfortable truths beneath layers of tradition. But William's move forced a reckoning. It reminded the crown that its power is not immune to the voices of the past, especially not when that voice belongs to Diana. Her clause was never about inheritance. It was about integrity. It was her final act of maternal protection, delivered decades after her death through the very man she raised to carry it forward. But as the monarchy scrambles to contain the storm, one final twist emerges from the shadows, and it threatens to destroy the last illusion of peace left in the House of Windsor. A locked vault beneath a private solicitor's office reveals a second will, undated, unsigned but undeniably written by Diana. It names William not just as heir but as protector of truth. But most damning of all, it contains a paragraph detailing a plan she believed might cost her life. The discovery was made not by accident but by persistence. A quiet lead, followed by a cryptic name in the Eclipse letter, directed William's legal advisors to a forgotten solicit. Orr's office in the heart of London. The building had changed hands, the files were archived, and the vault sealed for over 2 decades was barely more than a footnote in outdated paperwork. But inside that steel door, among dusty documents and forgotten records, lay something no one was prepared for, a second will. The paper was aged, the ink faded, but the voice that echoed from its pages was unmistakably Diana's. Though unsigned and without formal date, the handwriting, phrasing, and emotional intensity bore the hallmarks of a woman racing against time and fear. Unlike the official will that was sanitized and approved for public consumption, this version was raw, personal, and defiant. It spoke not of royal legacy, but of survival and truth. It stated that William was not only her heir, but her guardian of conscience charged with protecting what she called the truth untold. She wrote about the pressures, the isolation, and the threats she believed were orchestrated from within the palace walls. There were no names, only shadows. But in one devastating line she confessed, "If I am silenced, this will speak in my place." It was not a farewell, it was a warning. A chilling, deliberate promise from a mother who saw the storm long before it arrived. The legal standing of the second will remains in question. It lacks the formalities required to override the official document, and the Crown's legal counsel will undoubtedly attempt to dismiss it. But the impact of its contents cannot be measured in legality. It is measured in conscience, in symbolism, in revelation. William, upon reading it, didn't ask for validation. He didn't request a legal brief or a press strategy. He simply folded the pages, closed his eyes, and made a silent vow to the woman whose voice now echoed louder than ever. She had planned for this moment. She had entrusted him with more than memory. She had entrusted him with her unfinished battle. When the tape ended, and the last line of the second will was read, William stood before the palace gates not as a prince constrained by duty, but as a man released by truth. For too long the story had been controlled, the pain buried, the facts distorted. But now, as the monarchy faces its most profound reckoning in decades, William utters the words that silence every doubter. This time, her voice will be heard. As the echoes of Diana's voice ripple across the monarchy, one thing is clear. Her story was never over. It was waiting for William, for now, and for the truth to finally come to light.
Thanks for watching.
Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.